For this next bit, what I'm going to talk to you about is pulling out all the stops in healthcare. And I would say that we're at a very disruptive time in our industry. And I would say a good disruption, actually. There's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of new investment, there's a lot of change, and those sorts of things. And I think it's driven by a couple reasons. One is we've digitized healthcare, basically. And so it's a little bit like perhaps moving an economy from like a steam-powered economy to electricity. You suddenly have this new platform, new technology. It opens up new companies, new approaches, new ways to do things. And that's where we are with healthcare. And I also think the pandemic has, encouraged us to kind of get off the couch as an industry and build hospitals in 2 weeks and redo the workflow in our existing organizations to build vaccines faster than we've ever done in history, to take care of patients via video, those kinds of things. Those kind of quick changes, I think, encourage a spirit of disruption and change in our industry. But before I get too far on this concept, does anybody know where the expression pull out all the stops comes from? One person. A few? Very good. I did not know, actually. Apparently comes from, I know now, it comes from church pipe organs. So a church pipe organ basically the keyboards have like 61 keys. You maybe have 2 of those things, but they're way more than 61 pipes. You might have 1,000 different pipes, the big ones that you see. Sometimes there's a pipe room with a whole mess of other pipes as well. And what happens is that there are these stops. So let's say the flute stop. When you pull out the flute stop, that lets the air through the pipes that sound like a flute, basically. So as you play the keyboard, it'll sound flute-like. And if you want the organ to sound like a trumpet, then you pull out the trumpet stop, and those pipes will be activated. And if you want to sound like both, you can pull them both out, and it'll sound like a flute and a trumpet are playing together. Or you can pull out all the stops, basically. And what happens when you do this is all the pipes are activated, all the air is flowing through all the pipes, and you have this giant orchestral kind of all-in sound for the organ. And I think this is a good analogy for healthcare. There's really an all-in approach. There's a lot of companies, a lot of investors, a lot of excitement, in our industry, and it just feels like all the stops are out. And I would say there's kind of three major forces that are driving change in our industry: economic, consumerism, and technology. From an economic point of view, you have a lot of investment in healthcare. I read recently that there's 5 times the amount of investment in healthcare than any other industry. And healthcare is not 5 times bigger than other industries. So there's kind of this giant interest in getting into healthcare. And you can even see it with big companies like Oracle buying Cerner or Microsoft buying Nuance or those sorts of transactions. People really want a piece of healthcare, and they want to be engaged in this great industry. But on the buying side, so the governments, payers, purchasers, times are still difficult from an economic point of view. So we have an aging population. Our boomers are getting into those ages where they have multiple chronic conditions and those sorts of things. The cost to take care of a patient rises per year faster than most of the rest of the economy. So we have to choose between other social programs and healthcare and the other things we want in our economies typically. There's very thin margins. Health systems have already been thin. They've run at a 2% margin or so, but all that had been wiped away with the pandemic. So it's a very stressful time financially on the health system side. And buyers are, not as interested in paying fee-for-service, more. Basically, they want looking at different payment models like accountable care, paying for a set amount per patient per year, or global budgets for a public health system, a set of hospitals. Here's your budgets for the year. Good luck, take care of your patients, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of economic stress in the market that's creating churn and change. One of the most exciting areas is the rise of consumerism. And actually, this is the area that we've had most of the interesting discussions with all of you, our customers, around the last 6 to 12 months. So us as consumers, our expectations are changing. And they changed pretty rapidly during the pandemic. We want kind of that anytime, anywhere service, just like we get in other industries, banking or retail or finance or anything like that. We want that out of healthcare too. And you have companies really innovating in this regard. So you can get your physical and vaccination and flu shots and all that stuff at your local CVS or Walmart or things like that. You can get your pharmacies refilled from Amazon Pharmacy, or CVS and Walgreens are working on things like that. So healthcare is kind of coming to you as a consumer. And so we've had a lot of very interesting discussions, like I said, with many of you. And we'll hear from Eduardo from Ascension in a little bit, talking about some of his changes he's driving in this regard. But I'll give you a couple examples. So we were talking to this big health system about their patient portal. And a lot of health systems are building what's referred to as a digital front door. So, they spend kind of millions on the physical front door to sort of reflect the grandness of their brand. But the digital front door should look just as exciting and just as reflective of the way they want to reach out in the community. But for this particular customer, actually as many health systems, you can't use the patient portal unless you're a patient. So you have to first become a patient, a registered patient. You almost have to get sick, in a sense, before you can actually interact with the health system. So though they had a digital front door, it's closed, basically, unless you're already a customer. Now, what kind of business does that? What business would have the doors sort of inaccessible until you're already a customer? Most businesses want to reach out to their communities and engage new people. So converting that digital front door to something that is more consumer-focused, not just patient-focused, that's reaching out to the broader community before they actually need the services of being sick. Another example is this concept of rest of year. So we all go in to see the doctor 3 times a year. What about the other 362 days? What's the kind of interaction that you, if you're a health system or a payer or a life sciences company, want to have with your community when they're not in the building? What's the kind of engagement that you want to project out there, and relationship you want to have with your community? So a lot of kind of more consumer-oriented thinking is getting into our industry. And I'll give you one other example. So I have a shoulder that dislocates. So it's come out 9 times. Does anybody want to see it? Come on. No. I'll leave it in. And I had a couple surgeries to try and fix this thing up. And after one of the surgeries, I remember distinctly going back to the hospital and asking for my medical record. And they said, sure, we'll provide it to you. It's $10, and we'll mail it to you. And they mailed it to me, and I got it a couple weeks later. Now, that's kind of a very normal activity. Everybody's probably nodding. Yeah, I've done that too. Can you imagine if your bank did that? Like if you went in and asked for your bank account balance, and they said, sure, we can provide you that. It'll be $10, and we'll mail it to you, and you'll get it in 2 weeks. That would be ridiculous. But that's a bit of the ridiculousness that healthcare has had over the years with regard to kind of consumer friendliness. Now, that particular problem has changed a lot in the last 2 years. If you have Epic, if you go see a health system that has Epic or Cerner or TrackCare or those kind of products, if you have an iPhone, you can get access to your medical record at lunch, basically. You can get the whole thing there. Not that high percent of the population actually knows how to do that and that sort of thing, but things have opened up rapidly the last couple years. So the third area of change is technology. So this year, for instance, we will buy 320 million wearables. So this is a kind of a suddenly big industry for all of us. And not just Fitbits, but medical devices in the home, blood glucose monitors, ECGs, those kinds of things to sort of monitor patients in that setting so you can get care where you want to get it. And then a lot of experimentation around chatbots, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, different kind of approaches to take care of a patient where they are, instead of everything being about a physical visit between you and a doctor. So a lot of exciting change on the technology front as well. And I think all this is supporting a transformation in healthcare, a digital transformation in healthcare, moving to kind of a new healthcare environment. And I would just say 3 characteristics about the new healthcare environment. One is that it will be digital, so the kind of experience that we're used to in other industries, we'll have that in healthcare as well. Second, it'll be more flexible, so it'll be on our terms as consumers, not just necessarily on everybody else's terms, so that anytime, anywhere, kind of flexible approach to healthcare as much as can be done will be part of the more part of the future. And the third is, I would say, omni-channel. So from a, let's say, a health system point of view, or a payer, or a life sciences company conducting trials, that kind of thing, you would think about more than just the in-person experience. So what does that experience look like? But what does our portal look like? What do the kiosks look like? What does our social media presence look like in the way we interact with our consumers that way? What is our community events, sponsoring races, our advertising? What does the whole approach look like between us and our community, not just focused on that, the visit concept? So we're mid-transformation, and that's quite exciting. Now, in a disruptive environment where there's a lot of change, one of the most important things that you need to do is decide on your role. So what kind of role, what kind of unique angle, what kind of unique value proposition are you going to offer out in your communities, in your businesses? Are you going to double down on the status quo, let's say, and say this is, we've always been best at this and we'll remain best at this while everybody else sort of flounders with new approaches? Or are you going to pick some of these new approaches, double down on those, and see if they work? So there's a lot of choices to be made in a highly changing, dynamic environment. And we've made choices as well, areas that we think we should be great at and invest in those areas. And I'll talk through these 5. Interoperability, enabling innovation, scalability, clean data, and insight. So for interoperability, starting there, you can imagine now interoperability becomes even more important. If you have kind of this more decentralized healthcare system, more flexible healthcare system, more people involved in the health of the general population, having that free flow of information among all the parties is absolutely essential. Otherwise, it actually has the danger of being even more fragmented of a healthcare system. So interoperability is an area that we choose to be great at. I'll just tell you about one project we started earlier in the year. We launched a new offering called Health Connect Cloud. And this is basically a software as a service with our interoperability engine, Health Connect. It's paid for on a consumption model. It's easy to sort of start up and digest. Our very first customer is the Northwest London part of the NHS in England. Basically, they had 4 different hospital trusts. Each had their own integration engine, different engines. Each had their own team, sometimes building the same integration to the same third party. And they brought all that together at the regional level, picked our technology, standardized on our technology, and now they have a shared team for the region. So they can build integrations once. They can kind of manage the workload of the trusts instead of at an individual level, and manage the 24/7 operations. So that's we've actually signed a couple more customers with Health Connect Cloud. It's of great interest to many customers. The next area is enabling innovation. Of course, in a time of change, you need to move quickly. Some things are going to work out, some things are not going to work out, and you want to navigate very quickly. So supporting you and your need to be agile is another area that we choose to be great at. Now, InterSystems has always been a buy and build company, or enabling you to buy and build. So we have certain applications like TrackCare or HealthShare, where you can take advantage of kind of a full stack type of application. But we also have the world's best development platform as well. So you can take what you can get from us, and then you can kind of build innovation around that to have a unique perspective in your market. So example project of that is one we're working with starting earlier this year, Clover Health. They're a new payer customer of ours, and their goal is to distinguish themselves in the market via technology. So they use artificial intelligence, sophisticated algorithms to help the decision-making of their clinicians, their case managers, their authorization folks, claims folks, that kind of thing. And they sort of pack all this into an app called the Clover Assistant app, which they use to empower their users with these algorithms. They needed us, basically, they needed clean data, essentially. So they wanted to bring all their data together, clean it up, aggregate it, normalize it, deduplicate it, and then build applications on top of that. And so they built this Clover Assistant app basically on our HealthShare and our Iris for Health environment. So the third area that we choose to be great at is scalability. Of course, we want to enable all of you, whether you're a startup or whether you're a huge multinational, to scale your offerings, your products to as large as you need. And the best example of this, I think, is our relationship with Epic. We started with Epic when they were a startup, and now Epic is the largest, most important EHR company in the world. And also, even if you look at some of our other products like TrackCare or HealthShare, we basically have entire countries where all the medical records of those countries like the Netherlands, UAE, Scotland, California, New York, Texas, we've got these huge kind of 20, 30 million patient databases running on our technology. In fact, I would say, and somebody can correct me if you think of one, that every 10 million patient or more database that I've ever heard of runs on InterSystems technology, actually. So we're very proud of our ability to help you scale and get big. And all that pride, doesn't mean that we're resting on our laurels. So this is an area that we continue to invest on. There's many developers in this room that spend full time helping our technology continue to scale, to continue to perform. It's one of the areas, like I said, that we choose to be great at, and we always want to be a few steps ahead of your needs. The fourth one is clean data. So now that we have digitized healthcare, we have used that data mainly for single patient use cases. Like patient comes in, you sort of take care of that patient, you order a med's fulfilled, it's administered on the floor, you're looking at a unified care record for a patient. It's kind of that one patient at a time workflow. So that's where we started. But now that we have data on tens of millions of patients, there's so many new use cases that we can open up around new kinds of research, public health, population health, building machine learning models, those sorts of things on aggregated data. And so this is a really important kind of next phase, I think, of using digital data in healthcare. And I'll highlight one project on this. So we have a new offering as well called HealthShare Cloud, where like Health Connect Cloud, we offer HealthShare on a consumption-based model as a service. Early customer of this we signed them earlier this year and started working with them is Jackson Health and University of Miami. These two health systems in the same city wanted to work together around doing research on their combined de-identified patient data. In this case, though they share a lot of patients, they don't share every patient. So we needed to de-identify the data for them to actually do the research on these patients. So they use HealthShare Cloud. Basically, we're working with them to bring all the data together, match patients, then de-identify it, and then make it available for their researchers to do their joint research across the two organizations. So that's a pretty exciting project that we're quite excited about. And then the last area that we choose to be great at is insight. I think a lot of IT projects and a lot of data-based projects really produce great machine learning models or dashboards or reports that just don't get used and just don't make an impact. And so what's extremely important to have there be some fruits of our labor is to get those insights, to get those models, those kinds of things into the workflow of the users at the point of decision. Okay, and not just 7 clicks away, but right there when they're making decisions, that this kind of insight is sort of delivered to them. That's really, really important to make our work effective. So I'll highlight a couple things here. One is our customer Roads Group. Roads Group is in New Mexico, and New Mexico has a goal of eliminating hepatitis C by 2030, and Roads Group is part of this mission. What the state has done is they have special programs, special funding to treat hepatitis C patients, and most patients aren't aware of this. There's tens of thousands of patients that are eligible for these programs and these fundings, but aren't aware of it, and their doctors and other folks that they interact with aren't really connecting the dots. This is also a underdiagnosed condition. So there are risk factors, other sorts of things that could help lead to patients being brought in and being diagnosed earlier for this disease. And so what Rhodes has done is they built dashboards, rules, sophisticated algorithms, and plugged them right into the workflow throughout the state. And so patients that are eligible for this funding, for these programs, have high risk factors. Their doctors will know about it in real time, and other folks will know about it in real time and be able to engage them in the care that they need much earlier. So this helps save money. It helps eliminate this particular disease, and a patient discovering this earlier in the life cycle will have a much better outcome. So that's exciting, and we also are announcing this week a new component that we're releasing called the Healthcare Action Engine. And what this is, you'll see it later this morning actually, it's a low-code, no-code, rules-based environment where you can put in rules, you can put in triggers when you want these rules to fire, you can put in, well, what happens if a patient or whatever satisfied this rule. You can drive a notification, present a card of information, recommend a next action, that kind of thing. So it's all around using the data, encoding your algorithms, and then delivering that insight to the point of decision to the right person. So we're pretty excited about investing in this area. So those are the 5 areas that we choose to be great at. And we think these all really tie to what's happening with all of you in our industry around driving this digital transformation to this new healthcare environment. We are in the great city of Seattle. And I think one of the greatest things about Seattle is all the great musicians that have come out of this city. You have Heart and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and probably the greatest of all these is Jimi Hendrix. So I wanted to close with a Jimi Hendrix story. So Jimi Hendrix is widely seen as one of the very top guitar players of all time. He's usually actually number 1 on most lists, but he would never be dropped below number 2. He's just phenomenal, which is kind of amazing because his mainstream career was only 4 years long, and he only did 3 albums. But he basically catapulted himself to sort of a legendary status almost right away. So the year is 1967. He is slated to play at the Monterey Pop Festival. And at this point, in Monterey, California. And at this point, he had just released his first album a few weeks before, and he was basically unknown to the audience at this pop festival, and unknown to the U.S. Audience. But he was very well known to all the guitar gods over in the U.K. So Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Rolling Stones, Pete Townsend and The Who, everybody there, because Jimmy had gone over there and really blown them all away. We're quite aware of Jimi Hendrix and how great he was. So they're all at this festival, and the bands are all backstage, and they're arguing about which band should play in what order. Now, you would think this argument would be that each band would propose that they do the headlining slot because they're the best band, they're the most popular, they do the best job, that sort of thing. But that wasn't the argument. The argument was nobody wanted to follow Jimi Hendrix, basically. So they were arguing with Jimi, saying that Jimi had to go last, that nobody wanted to follow him because then they would look bad. And this argument was actually led by Pete Townsend of the Who. And he was basically telling Jimi, you know what, we cannot follow you. We're not going to do that. You have to go last. Now, Jimi thought this whole thing was strange because nobody in the audience knew him. He just came out with a record. He was brand new, unknown by the crowd. You know, why is he supposed to headline? But at any rate, apparently he jumped on a chair, played like 30 seconds of great guitar. He jumped down, and he went to Pete Townsend, and he said, if I'm going to follow you, I'm going to pull out all the stops. So a couple hours later, the Who is playing. They're third from last. And Jimi Hendrix is on the side of the stage watching the Who. And they do just a fantastic job. So they play a nice set. They're a very popular band at this time. They smash up all their instruments at the end, as the Who had commonly done. We're not going to do that, by the way, tonight, just FYI. But they smash up all the instruments, and Jimi Hendrix is looking at them saying, geez, how am I going to top that? So the second to last band is the Grateful Dead. And instead of Jimi watching them, he runs around backstage to try and find lighter fluid, basically, which he does find, as it turns out. And then Jimi Hendrix does the last set. And this is like 30-minute set, something 45-minute set, and just does an incredible job, you know, basically a legendary performance. And at the end, he lays his guitar on the stage, covers it with lighter fluid, lights it on fire, and sacrifices his guitar to the gods, basically. And he kind of creates one of the most famous moments in rock and roll history and one of the most iconic images. And from that point on, he was basically a legend at the top of his game. So he did pull it off and had this very famous event. Now, you know, he wasn't great because he lit the guitar on fire. You know, any self-respecting teenage boy can light random stuff on fire, right? He was great because he was a great guitar player. He had great songs. His band was fabulous behind him. He had fantastic stage presence. And he used the energy of the audience, to create a moment. Well, I think this can be our moment in healthcare. We have the energy of the market on our favor. We have this disruptive spirit. We have the investment. We have the excitement of consumerism. We have the spirit of change in our market. And I also think the other thing the pandemic has given us is confidence. You know, confidence that we can indeed drive change in our market, that we don't have to just continue the status quo, that we can make a new healthcare system that's much better and we can actually pull it off. So I would recommend that we use the energy in the market, that we use this confidence, and that we too pull out all the stops. Thank you.